Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be my 24 favourite books of 2024. This is very difficult. It's taken me ages to come up with a list of 24 favourites because I've read 240 books this year. So to narrow that down to 24, bit difficult to be honest. And if you ask me to do this tomorrow, the list might even slightly differ then. But I think I've got it how I want it. I think I can give you my top 24. So let's get started. I think I'm gonna go in order of like from 24 to 1. And these are pretty much all 4.75 to 5-star reads. I'm not gonna go into like ratings and full reviews and that. I'm just gonna tell you my favourites and why I love them, basically. Number 24, Wild Love by Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver was always going to make an appearance on this list because she's one of my favourite authors, and I absolutely loved this book. I know it's not as popular as a lot of her other books, but I personally loved it. I loved Ford, I loved Rosa, I loved the relationship and the banter between them. I loved the email threads that they were having. It was just fun, it was romantic, the spice was great. One thing I think Elsie Silver does is she writes spice really well, but also doesn't write too much of it that it ruins the plot. So yeah, I just really loved it. And I thought this was actually some of her best writing as well. So loved it, and it had to be in the top 24. Number 23, Miss Abby Jimenez with Just for the Summer. I loved this book so much. This is the epitome of how like love is in the actions and love is in the small things. Like it doesn't have to be grand gestures. And I think the male main character Justin in this book was just so lovely. He was such a golden retriever, acts of service kind of guy. And I just love Abby Jimenez writing. I've annotated some really beautiful quotes in here and I really loved it. I also loved that this is part of the universe as the same universe as Part of Your World and Yours Truly, and this is the last book in that kind of universe, and I think it tied it up really nicely. So I just really loved it, and it is definitely one of my favourites of this year. Number 22, Last Night by Vari McFarlane. This is the first book I have read by this author, and it did not disappoint at all. I would say that you would love this if you are a fan of Emily Henry or Abby Jimenez, really. I think the writing style is very similar in that it's a really emotionally complex book, but it also has so much like funny, witty banter and dialogue between characters. But like I say, it is very emotionally complex. We've got love, loss, tragedy, grief, betrayal, everything. It's a roller coaster. This is categorized as a romance, but I think the romance is more of a subplot, to be honest. So do with that what you will, but I think this is an absolutely fantastic book and I think people should talk about it more often. Number 21 is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. I'm so sorry, I can never pronounce that name. Someone please tell me in the comments how to pronounce that. Anyway, really enjoyed this. This is basically our female main character is a witch and our male main character is a witch hunter, and they are basically kind of like calling each other's bluff in a way. They're kind of playing each other off against each other, but then the way it ends, you could tell there was going to be a second book. It ended on quite a cliffhanger. It was very action-packed. I just really enjoyed it. Just had a really fun time. Really liked it. And I'm so excited for the second book. Number 20 is The Unmaking of June Farrow. I have spoken about this book in quite a lot of my recent videos because I only read it quite recently. I absolutely loved this. It's magical realism. We've got time travel. We've got an epic love story. We have got murder mystery alongside all of that as well. So there's so much going on. The writing is beautiful. The pacing is beautiful. The conclusion and how everything kind of clicks and comes together is really good. Very unique, I would say. It's just a really unique story. And I absolutely loved it. Loved it. And I think it's very underrated as well. I think it deserves more hype. Really good. Number 19, Fredrik Backman with A Man Called Ove. This is so sad and so funny and so beautiful. It's emotionally complex. I'll probably be using that phrase quite a lot in this video, but it is quite emotionally complex. The writing, I don't know what it is about Fredrik Backman's writing. It's so simplistic, but really, really captivates you and really, really makes you care and fall in love with these characters that are not really like lovable characters. Like Ove in this book, who is the main character, he is a really, really grumpy old man and can be quite like rude to people, but you love him. Like you love him because you get his backstory and you know why he kind of feels the way that he does about certain things. It's just honestly so beautiful. It's definitely one of my favorite books I read this year because of how it made me feel. I loved it so much. And Ove reminds me of my granddad, so I think that's why as well. Number 18, we have got a romanticer, and that is A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden, which is the first book in the Sacred Stones trilogy. I have since read all three of these. It's just a fantastic trilogy that I would recommend to any romantasy lovers. It's very simple, as in the whole fantasy world building, magic and stuff are very, very easy to understand. It's not complicated at all, but I honestly like that. I like that in a fantasy sometimes. I would say that this is, although it's a romantasy, I would say it's probably aimed more at the romance girlies. I think the romance is more of the forward-facing plot, but the fantasy and the magic system alongside it is fantastic and it's great. Some of the side characters as well are absolutely fantastic. There's two side characters that I really, really want them to get their own story because I love them just as much as the two main characters. I'm really bad at talking about fantasy books without spoiling it, so I'm not gonna like go into it, but if you like romantasy, give it a read. Number 17, I've got as Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I actually still never bought the physical copy of that. I read it on my Kindle. I loved this so much. I think one of the main reasons that I loved this so much is obviously because of, you know, Abby Jimenez is an amazing author anyway and the writing was so good. But the male main character suffered really badly with anxiety. So I feel like I just related to it and connected with it a lot. And I think that always makes you love a book even more when you can relate to what the main character's thoughts and feelings are. It just makes you love the book even more. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a beautiful story. It was a little bit annoying at the end. The female main character was a little bit annoying towards the end, but it didn't ruin my reading experience. I still absolutely loved it. Number 16 again is a book that I still haven't got the physical copy of yet, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. If you are on Book Talk, you would have probably seen or heard about this book. It's kind of taken Book Talk by storm, and I can see why. I absolutely loved it. It's quite a long book. I can't remember how many pages, but it's quite a long book, but I still didn't want it to end. Like, I was reading it and I did not want it to end at all. I thought the world building was really, really good. I thought the magic system was really, really fantastic. And again, not overly complicated. It wasn't overly complex and really intricate. It was just good and strong, but also easy enough to understand. So I really, really liked that. Really, really strong side characters as well. Not just the two main characters that were absolutely fantastic, but some side characters were absolutely hilarious. It was just the full package for me, to be honest. I would say, you know, romantasy that falls under the category of being more aimed at the romance girlies, but for me, fantasy and romance both worked really well together in this book, and I am so excited for the next book because, yeah, like I say, I didn't want it to end. I was gutted when I finished it. Number 15 is a recent read of mine, and that is Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. Again, another romantasy, but I actually think this one is heavier on the fantasy. I think the romance definitely falls as more of a subplot, but that works really, really nicely because it creates a really slow burn tension, which I really love in a romantasy book anyway. I just think it just makes it feel more worthwhile when something eventually happens. So yeah, I would say this one is definitely more for the fantasy girlies. I loved this so much. Like, from page one of this book, really, we're just like right into the nitty gritty. It had me like intrigued from page one. There are actually 3 books out in this series now. I have read all 3 of them and loved all 3 of them. The male main character is wow. I love him. Number 14 is a book that I don't feel like I speak about a lot, but I absolutely devoured it in one sitting, and that was Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This is dark gothic romantasy. We've got witches, devils, necromancers, ghosts, everything. and it is death trials, which I love. I absolutely love the high stakes death trials kind of vibe. This book is perfect if you love those things. It was spicy, it was romantic, it was just everything that I love in a book. The only thing that I was sad about was that I felt like the ending, like things were resolved quite quickly. I just wanted it to last longer. I was having so much fun reading it, I couldn't put it down. Number 13 is actually a novella, which is quite unusual because it's not even a full book, but I loved it so much, and that was Powerful by Lauren Roberts. So this falls in between Powerless and Reckless. This is in the middle, and the main character of this book is Adina, and we meet Adina in Powerless. This book absolutely broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. I was crying my little eyes out at this book. And to be honest, I will always give brownie points to a book that can make me cry, because I think for words on paper to evoke that kind of emotion out of you says a lot. It says a lot about how good the writing is and stuff. I loved this especially because it's a fantasy and it's very, very like high stakes, but Adina is so relatable in that, you know, in fantasy books, you get the female main characters are so badass, they're like assassins and they have powers and all this, but Adina, literally, she's just a girl. She's just a girl, she just wants to stay safe. She just wants to make some clothes. She, you know, she doesn't want to die, she just wants to be safe. She just wants to be a chill girl, just a chill girl. And that literally could not be any more me. If I was ever in a fantasy book, that would be me. So I just loved it. And I think for this to be like however many pages it was, 245 pages, and one of my favourite love stories that I've ever read. So to make a love story that good in 245 pages says a lot, if you ask me. It says a lot. I absolutely loved this so much, and I think about it quite often, to be fair. Number 12, Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. Also another book that I have spoken about quite a lot in my recent videos, so apologies if you think, wow, Olivia, shut up about that book now. I loved this so much. I love this so much. There's so many characters that we're focusing on in this book, like so many characters. And again, writing is so simplistic, but why do I care about every single character in this book? Every single character, I care about them so much. And I feel like Fredrik Backman just portrays like human emotion and human like normal life experiences that day-to-day people go through. He just makes it so real and so relatable, and he just does it so well. Whilst his books, you know, like his writing, it's so emotional and so beautiful, but also so funny and so witty, and I love everything about it. I love everything about it. I love this book so much, and I definitely plan to reread it in 2025. Number 11, The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee. This is a very, very spicy romantasy. If you like Powerless by Lauren Roberts, think of it like that, but on steroids in terms of spice. Powerless is better, but I mean like, it's like Powerless, but a spicy version of Powerless. And guys, I do like a bit of spice sometimes, I've got to be honest. I love this. I loved this. Both of the main characters, I just think, wow, hot, hot. I devoured it. I didn't put it down. I read it in one sitting. I absolutely loved it. This was just a fun time. This was a very, very fun time. And sometimes that's all I want, you know? Sometimes I don't want the absolute best writing in the whole entire world, like an absolute masterpiece of literature. Sometimes I don't need that. I just want to have a fun time. And I had a fun, spicy time with this book, and I loved it. Guys, we're in our top 10 now. We are in our top 10. We're in our top 10. Let's go. Number 10, Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. I loved this book so much. I adored it. I absolutely adored it. And again, coming back to how relating to a character makes you love the book more, I really, really related to Teddy and the things that she, you know, like the worries she had about life and the worries that she had about her future and stuff. I could just really, really relate to that. I loved her. I loved her energy. I loved her vibe. I just loved everything about it. I loved all of the characters in this book. I loved the little daughter that Gus has got in this book. I found her really funny. The romance and the like blossoming relationship between them just again felt really like real and really organic. The spice was perfectly written and there wasn't too much of it that it ruined the story. So for me, I just absolutely loved it. Loved it so much. Number 9, Assistant to the Villain. Oh my god. I loved this book so much. I had literally no expectations about this book. It was not even on my TBR. I just got sent it and thought, oh, okay, I'll read it. Loved it. Loved it. Oh my god, loved it so much. This is fantasy, but like really whimsical, feels like you're in a fairy tale kind of fantasy. It's just fun, adventurous, action-packed. It's also really funny, really, really funny. It's high stakes. It's just such a good time. It is such a good time. You don't really know what's going, you don't really know who you can trust. It's just, oh. There's also like the tension between the two main characters. Like nothing happens in this book, I'm gonna tell you that right now. I don't even think we get a kiss in this book. I've read both. I've read the first and the second book and I can't remember. Something happens eventually, but not in this book. Yeah, only read this if you're a slow burn fan, because you will not get any spice in this book. But I loved that about it. I loved like the yearning and the tension on the side just made the story so much better. I absolutely adored every single minute of it. I ate this book up. Number 8, The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I think I spoke about this in my end of year book tag video, because I was saying that this is not a book that I would usually love. This is a YA mystery. Not something I read. Don't really read YA anyway, because YA, I just feel sometimes weird reading about like teenagers. But I absolutely loved this so much. I loved all the characters. They all had something like so special and unique about them. I loved the plot twists in this. Like I didn't really know where things were going, because in this book, this group of teenagers have been taken on by the FBI to help the FBI solve cold cases, because each individual person, each one of the teenagers has like a special set of skills, whether they are like, you know, natural profilers or something like that. So they have something to offer the FBI. And so there's 4 books in the series, and each book follows a different case. And I never really knew where the cases were going. It was just so good. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. It's so good. I loved it so much. I'm really short as well. Easy to fly through. I loved it. Loved it. Number 7 is a book I don't have in physical copy because I read it on my Kindle, but that is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. I was really in my Sarah J Maas era this year. So I only just read the Crescent City series this year, and House of Sky and Breath was probably my favourite out of that series. I love a lot of the characters in that series. It's not my favourite series, but just that book and a lot of the characters in that book I loved. And for me, the ending of House of Sky and Breath, I'm not going to tell you what the ending is or what it entails, but if you're a Sarah J Maas fan and you read the ending of House of Sky and Breath, it's just like like it's one of those moments where if you lay down reading it, like you sit up dead quick, you're like so good, so good, so good, so good, so good. I absolutely just loved that experience of it. In 6th place, we have Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. Again, I think I spoke about this in a bit of detail in my end of year book tag video. It's a dark romance. We've basically got Cora and Cora's sister's fiance, Dean. They both end up basically stuck in this really traumatic situation together, and they have to kind of rely on each other to survive and to try and get out of this situation that they're in. So that's kind of all I'll say about it in terms of premise, because I don't want to spoil anything, but look how much of this book that I annotated. The writing was sensational. I've never really read anything as like traumatic and taboo as this, really. It's so emotional. Like it really, really just like tugged on my heartstrings. I cared about the 2 main characters so much. Like I was really rooting for them. I felt like I felt their pain, and it was just like a beautiful story that, like, you know, when you close a book and you're just like, wow, and you just like kind of stare at the wall. That's really how this book made me feel. I think about it so often, and again, it's a book that I will definitely be rereading in 2025. Now we are in our top 5 books of 2024. Top 5 books of 2024, guys. Let's go. In 5th place, we have got the queen herself, and that is Emily Henry with Funny Story. This was only released this year. I think it came out in April. I got it on release day and I read it on release day in one sitting because I loved it. There's just something about Emily Henry. She does it for me every time. She does it for me every time. I love the way she writes her characters and the banter that she writes between characters. I think it just really, really hits the spot. But again, there's always like an undertone of some deeper topics. And I think in this one, it was kind of like, you know, difficult relationships with families and ex-partners and stuff like that. Miles and Daphne are both of them are just so endearing, really. Miles is quite like a quirky character, same with Daphne. They just have so much about them. I loved their story. I loved the setting of the story. I loved the writing. I underlined so many quotes in this book that I found so relatable. So I just loved it. I loved it. So this was like an instant 5-star read for me. Instant. In fourth place, we have got Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. The way I cried my eyes out at this book, not even normal. Actually, not even normal. This is a part of the Magnolia Parks universe, but this is the last of Magnolia and BJ's books. There are going to be other books about other characters, but for Magnolia and BJ, this was where their story concluded. To have gone on the journey with them that they've been through, and to have kind of fallen in love with them in their own crazy, messy way, this just really felt, it just hit different emotionally. Like it just hit different. I can't really talk about it because, like I say, it's the conclusion of Magnolia and BJ's story, so I would literally just be telling you what happens with them. But I will let you know that grief is a very, very big topic in this book. Also with like OCD as well, and ADHD and stuff like that. We just get a lot of real life, like day-to-day struggles that people would experience. This book will really, really resonate with you because it has so much in there. And I think the grief aspect of it was written really, really well. And it was just such an emotional but such a gorgeous, perfect book. I loved it so much. Top three. Now, if you know me, you should know what this top 3 is going to look like. You should know. And you know that this is going to be in there. Number 3, The Book of Asriel. I almost feel like I'm not even doing it justice by putting it at number 3. Like, it's so incredible, it could go at number 1, but just when you see what I've put at number 2 and number 1, you'll understand. This is definitely not only one of my favourite books that I've read this year, but definitely one of my favourite books of all time. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. It is so action-packed. It is so full of like tension and high stakes and drama and pure chaos, honestly. Pure chaos, pure female rage, betrayal, everything. Absolutely everything that you could want in a book. But it didn't feel like, in a way that, you know when it feels like an author has sometimes just thrown everything into a book for the sake of it. It wasn't like that. Like, everything in this book was so essential to the story. Everything in this book was written so well. The main character, you will love the characters in this book. Like, you will absolutely love Diana, the female main character. She is the baddest bitch of all. And I love her so much. Sam Kuehl, the male main character, he is incredible. He is so protective. He is so loyal and beautiful and amazing. And I love her, I love him, I love everyone. I love the whole book. I love the fantasy, I love the romance. I love it all. I love it all. Absolutely infinity star read for me. Number 2, Beach Read by Emily Henry. I made this book my whole entire personality. To be honest, I did. I talk about it probably every day. I read it in January of this year and I talk about it every day. I know I've said it quite a few times in this video about how when you love a character, you're going to love the book even more. From literally the first chapter, don't even know why, but from the first chapter, I cared so much about January. January is the female main character in this book. I just loved her. I loved her. I don't know why. I felt like I literally put myself into her. I was reading about January as if I was January. Like, I don't know. I literally put myself into this story. I loved it so much. When I watch you sleep, I feel overwhelmed that you exist. How can you read that and not give this book a 5-star, 6-star, infinity star rating? Like, how actually? Gus, the male main character, he is everything. He is everything and more. He is sensational. I love him so much. I love him. I love them. I love their relationship between them. I love the banter between them. It had me laughing. It had me choked up. And grief is quite a big topic in this book, but I think it was written beautifully and perfect. And oh my God, guys, like, I would literally get this book tattooed onto my whole body. I love it so much, and I'm going to reread it in the summer of 2025. We are now onto our top spot, our number 1 position of the best book that I read in 2024. Now, my number 1 spot would go to a whole series, but because I'm not doing it, I'm not putting a whole series at number 1. I'm going to give you my favourite book from that series, and yeah, it was my favourite book of the year, to be honest. But the series as a whole would be number 1. Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas, which is from the Throne of Glass series. I know I just said that I made Beach read my personality, but that was nothing on the scale that I made this my personality. This series, wow, it is the best series I have ever read in my life. I loved it. I think it is just perfect. Our female main character in this series is one of the best characters of all time. Not just female main characters, just one of the best characters of all time. The whole series is kind of just like the epitome of how a small act of kindness can, you know, give you some really powerful allies, and it can change the world, it can save the world. We just go on such a journey. There's 8 books in this series. We go on such an incredible, amazing journey. The battle scenes are just sensational. The characters and the character development, like there's some characters that I literally hated in the first couple of books, and then in the last couple of books I was in love with them. I loved them so much. And even some characters, some new characters that we get introduced to along the way, like they only come in at like, let's say book 4 or 5, whatever, and they become like absolute key essential parts of the story. Like just love them so much. The little side like subplots of romance that we have going on, not even with the 2 main characters but with all the other characters as well, there's just everything about it is perfect. Everything about it is perfect. It is probably the best reading experience that I had. Again, I read this in January of this year. I read the whole series back to back to back. I didn't stop. I didn't read anything else in between. I just read Throne of Glass. Like the first 2 weeks of January I read the whole series, and I fear I'll be chasing that high for the rest of my life. To be honest, I don't think that anything will ever compare to the way that I felt when I read Throne of Glass. Like I actually, for a while I was like, how do I move on from this? Where do we go? Where do we go from here? The only way is down. But you know, that's why I don't even know if I'll ever reread it, because I'm like, it'll never be the first time again. Like experiencing this series for the first time, like my advice would be, 1, to start with Assassin's Blade, read Assassin's Blade first, and 2, take your time with it. Actually take your time with it, cherish every moment of being able to read this series for the first time. It's so good. It's so good. I am so glad that I read it this year. I'm so glad that I discovered it. It is the best thing I've ever read. Honestly. So that was my 24 favourite books of 2024. Like I say though, it's so difficult to just narrow that down to 24 books because I have read 240. So I have so many that I absolutely loved and adored. Those are the ones that I think about the most. So, you know, they had to make the top 24, but there are so many that I could speak about. It's been an incredible reading year for me, like absolutely incredible. In terms of quantity as well, like I've never read that many books in my life. So, you know, I've read loads of books, I've read loads of amazing books. And yeah, it's just been fantastic. I have found some of my, not only, you know, favourite books of this year, but favourite books of all time. I have discovered them in the year of 2024. So it's been fantastic. And I cannot wait to see this time next year what my top 25 books of 2025 are going to be. Crazy. Crazy. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I love having you here and I hope that you will return. If you enjoyed this video, please, you know the drill, like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And I will hopefully see you next time.